Meeting to order, Wednesday, April 10th, 2019 at 6:30. Please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Hi, Chief.
I can't. Any public comments at this time? Yes, sir. Come up and identify yourself.
John Thomas, Crossroads.
No, you need to come to the desk. Yeah.
Yes, you have to come to the microphone so we can actually get it all recorded.
John Thomas.
Yes, John.
I was at the meeting last week when the school budget and the override and the town budget were being discussed.
Mm-hmm.
And if my understanding is correct, if the override is defeated, it does not necessarily mean an $888,000 cut to the school budget along with Phillipston's share. A no vote on the override begins a process similar to what we went through a number of years ago. And that process can result in the school budget staying the same or being reduced. It can result in the town budget being cut, or worst case, it can result in the state telling us what our budget is going to be. And I think it's a complicated process because normally an override vote is spend money or don't spend money.
Mm-hmm.
These circumstances, I believe, fall under a different category of steps, and I think that needs to be well explained to the voters. You talked about a voter guide, which I think is wonderful, and I hope this information about the process can get into people's hands and perhaps be included in the guide. But it's very difficult for people to make a decision when the whole thing is very complicated and not well understood, I don't think.
Understood. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. No, thank you so much.
you.
I appreciate it. Any other public comments? I see none.
I do.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Come on up and identify yourself.
Terry Griffiths, 12 Dory Lane. I just
Terry.
am interested in the sale of the Baldwinville Elementary School and how it's going to proceed. And I was informed that it would be better suited to a lab, not a grow facility, because of the smell and the fans and things that it's going to require for noise in the neighborhood, and the potential for the smell of it to go over to Gardner.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Carter, when was the neighborhood meeting going to be? And may I also address Mrs. Griffiths?
Sure. So the next step is a request to the town meeting for $17,500 for all of the legal work associated not only with the sale but with the other. And we've tentatively scheduled a really sort of dedicated to the neighborhood, but also that the public at large can come to, for June 4, to start a larger conversation with the community about everything that sits behind this proposal.
So I was on the reuse committee, and they do have odor control within the scope of their work.
Is
And
there a
all of that
noise?
is, and noise, and all of that, they are a good neighbor.
Okay.
All of that was explained to us to make sure that all of that is controlled.
Okay.
Okay, so, but you'll
Still
want to come
attend the
to that
meetings
public
and-
at-large meeting.
Okay, thanks.
All right, you're welcome.
Terry, you're one of the candidates for Selectmen, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you will be well informed of every move that building makes as soon as you get elected. I guarantee it.
Actually, she should be receiving some information
Via email? Yep.
now.
Mhm.
I hope that that is happening for you.
Small amounts, yeah.
You did get an email, right, correct?
Yeah, I got 3.
Okay, great.
Okay, so if there's some information that you would like on that, perhaps you could
Holly?
ask Carter.
Oh, right. Okay,
Some information you would be able to have.
okay. And that way I can talk to people that are talking to me and.
Yeah,
Sure. Sounds good. Any other public comments? I see none. Meeting minutes for 3/9/19.
I make a motion to approve the minutes for March 9th, 2019, as written.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, a second, any other discussion? See none. Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Meeting minutes for 3/27/19.
I make a motion to approve the minutes for March 27th, 2019, as written.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, a second, any other discussion? I see none. Julie?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Sorry.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Meeting minutes for 4/3/19.
I make a motion to approve the minutes for April 3rd, 2019, as written.
Okay, I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? See none. Julie?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Executive session minutes for 3/27/19.
I move to approve the executive sessions meeting minutes of 4/3/19 and to be held until deemed
For
appropriate for
3/27.
release. Oh, 3/27, sorry.
3/27/19. And to be released to the public? Not to
Motion
be.
was written wrong.
Yep.
And to be held until deemed appropriate for release.
Excellent. Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, a second. Any other discussion? See none. Julie?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Any objections to moving the show cause hearing up?
No objection from me,
Any objection?
Mr. Chairman.
Any objection? Okay, I'm gonna open the continuation of the show cause hearing. Mr. Arsenault, you would gonna step up, please, with your legal representative? Yes, Mr. Tanzini.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, at the last session, the license holder asked for an opportunity to have the hearing continued until he could engage counsel. He has done so, and we have now had an opportunity to discuss the matter with town council. And there is a proposal put forth, subject to the board's decision-making process, that the chief and I think makes some sense, sends the message that we are serious about the enforcement of the statutes, is not overly burdensome upon the business owner. And I know that this board likes us to try to be pro-business to the extent that we can, avoids litigation, expenses on the property owner's, license holder's side, and no disrespect to him, more importantly to me, avoids litigation on the town budget side. The proposal is that the license holder would stipulate that there were facts sufficient for this body to make a finding that there had been a violation and to take appropriate action. That appropriate action being a suspension of his right to serve for 2 Fridays in either May or June, subject to mutual agreement between the chief of police and the license holder. That the rear door, which has been used as an entry door from the cellar level, from the lower level, would be secured such that it could be only used as an emergency exit from the premises. that there would be staff on the door checking IDs every Friday and Saturday night from 9 p.m. to close, and that all current employees would be TIPS certified or the equivalent within 120 days, and all new staff would be so certified upon hire, or, I don't know, 30 to 60 days, we'd work out something that's reasonable. We put this before the board for your consideration. If you find that agreeable, if not, then we would need to move into the show cause hearing. I don't know if you want to allow counsel for the license holder to speak at all before making that decision. I leave that to the board.
There were 2 points, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Michael Wilcox. I represent Mr. Arsenault and his licensed establishment. The 2 points were that they were going to be 2 Fridays, not consecutive Fridays, to do as little damage to his business as possible. And secondly, that the tip certification would be of people who are charged with serving alcohol, so that if someone's cleaning the establishment, or people who are not actually handling alcohol for sale to the public, would not require a tip certification.
And that certainly would be consistent with what the intent was.
Right.
Having a cleaning person being tip certified.
That makes no sense. I got you.
Required.
Yeah.
I got you.
We also have, waitresses for breakfast and things like that, which I would assume that would be included. They don't need to be tip certified to be serving food or working in the kitchen.
Handling or serving alcohol
Right.
would be the intent.
I got you.
So we lay that for you for your consideration. Again, it is subject to the wishes of the board, and council understood in us proposing this that it was fully up to the board to make that decision.
I think it would be every other Friday. It may not be consecutive, but it would not be one Friday and then the last Friday. It would
Understood.
be every other Friday.
Okay, every other Friday, I got you.
But the rest of that is agreeable to me. Doug?
Yeah, I'm not sure 2 Fridays is sufficient, considering the information that we've given.
But that's what town council is saying.
2 Fridays?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I speak on that? I agree with Doug. I'm not so sure. The 2-day suspension, I'm a little
2 Fridays and a Saturday?
uncomfortable. The 2-day suspension with everything that we've been given, but, again, I would support if this is something
I was just
that
going with town council's.
the town council is suggesting only 2 days.
I don't feel like it fits the severity, but it was just, that was town council's advice.
Yes, Mr. Tanzini.
Let me say that I understand the board's concerns. The objective was to try to send a message to not be overly burdensome upon the business owner, to be serious, but not overly burdensome, and to try to come to a mutual agreement such
Right.
that we could avoid
Avoid
litigation.
litigation.
You need to understand, not litigation, but legal expenses. They have a perfect right, should you go with the hearing, make a determination that they find objectionable, they then appeal that to the ABCC. That becomes can become a lengthy process, and it can become a costly process. So we were trying to touch a number of stones, and they were not necessarily all mutually, aligned, but we were trying to touch each of those bases.
If I may, once
Yes,
again.
yes,
I just
Counsel.
point out that since Mr. Arsenault has owned the establishment, this is his first claimed violation. I understand from speaking to the administrator that there were the previous owner or owners had violations. He does require tip certification for his bartenders now. We have a bartender here who was working that night, and we have another bartender who happened to be in the establishment that night. So I understand the allegations are serious. The tragedy that occurred is certainly serious. There is evidence to suggest that this individual was served 2 cocktails that night. Now, the standard is visible intoxication, and we have a number of people who were with him who would say that he didn't show signs that were outwardly visible and visibly intoxicated. So it is a situation where we're desirous of saving our client as much money in terms of litigation expense and doing the least amount of damage to his business. He is not someone who is disregarding what happened. If you read the reports, you will see that he cooperated fully, put them in touch with the bartender, attempted to retrieve the receipts. We have the receipts now. Attempted to provide the videotape. So he was cooperative. He has tried to be a good neighbor. He has tried to be a responsible business owner. This is his first infraction, and to take more than 2 days is going to bite deeply into his business. 2 days is not an insignificant punishment here. That is a great deal of income to him, and he operates, as many small business owners do, with very tight margins.
Understood.
So that was the point why we were agreeing to this, and I understand your concern. I understand your concern, sir. It is something that I think that serves the public interest, it serves the public safety, and it serves him, and it serves as a warning that the town takes these matters very seriously.
Thanks, Council. I appreciate your input.
It's unfortunate, but the infraction resulted in a fatality. So, and we can't have that life back.
That's true, and I don't take issue with that. We do take issue to some degree with the extent of the infraction and part of the process, and it's a difficult, believe me, not meaning to belittle what happened with that young man. It is difficult under the best of circumstances to monitor to the degree that one would require in all cases. We have a receipt that he was served 2 drinks that night. And I understand other people are saying he was at another establishment, I believe in Phillipston, earlier in the evening. And to what extent he was intoxicated when he arrived, that would be our understanding that if, have not even been made aware of his blood alcohol concentration that night. I'm not sure that that's even available to this point. Mr. Arsenault is willing to do this because he wants to end this process. He wants the town to understand that he is serious about making sure that this type of thing doesn't ever happen. No life is insignificant here. I don't mean to suggest by my comments, madam, that we're disregarding anything here. Mr. Toohey was a friend of this bar. He was known to everybody. The bartender who's here tonight was a long-term friend of his. This is a neighborhood guy who lost his life in a senseless accident. And we just are concerned that the punishment doesn't come down so hard that we do more damage than is necessary. That's all. And I apologize if I've offended you in any way, ma'am. It was not my intention.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just had one other question.
Sure.
On Friday nights, I don't go into your establishment, so I don't know, like, what is the average time that you start to get fairly busy? Is 9 p.m. Early enough to have someone carting at your front door?
It's plenty early, yeah.
It is?
Generally,
Okay.
I mean, generally we'll see a little rush in the late afternoon to maybe 7 o'clock, and then it quiets right down, usually till like 10 o'clock.
Okay.
I
So
don't
9
have the
o'clock
exact
is
figures.
reasonable then?
It's plenty early, yeah, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have any objections to this?
Well, the dates, it's said for the attorney to decide between the chief and the business owner. Is that an accurate statement, Carter?
Mutually agreeable, although my understanding is you would like to have 1 week in between whatever the Fridays are, so that basically there are 2 Fridays within a 3-week period, is my understanding from the board, and we would need to see if that's agreeable to council.
Is
It
that
would be.
agreeable?
It would be.
Thank you.
Okay, good.
So if that's the case, Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
I would respectfully request a motion to approve the disposition as set forth and to direct town council to draft an appropriation stipulation agreement for the license holder to sign off on. I think we could get that done probably within 2 weeks.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second.
Can I just ask a question about these,
Yes.
the stipulations about the back door?
Mm-hmm.
Is that for all day, like
Yep.
even during breakfasts?
Yep.
Okay.
That will be forever.
Emergency exit only.
Okay. Okay, I know I had
I
talked
don't
this
think I
before.
would sway on that.
No, that's fine. I had talked to an officer before about it, and I just asked to make sure with the fire chief that it was okay to do that, because he is the officer had suggested a chain across, and before I did that and got, I didn't want to have a station episode like in Rhode Island, I wanted to make sure that was all okay to do.
It will be an emergency exit only?
Yes, but, I just want to make sure I'm doing it right with the fire department and everything.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Fire Chief.
I did talk with one of the officers about that and everything. I actually went to Department of Fire Services, talked with them about if we could do anything at the top of the stairs. And it was recommended at the top of the stairs, we don't unless a wall and a door was built with an exit sign and so forth. My recommendation was they make crash bars, which they already have a crash bar in that door so that it could stay locked from the outside, but still be an egress, an exit point from the inside all the time. But my recommendation was also to put a audible alarm crash bar on it, so that way the owner or the occupants, the staff would know if a client went down there and opened that door and tried to prop it open, because it would be an alarm that would,
Okay.
a local alarm, nothing that went to the police. or
Understood,
fire,
understood.
just a local shriek alarm.
Did you get all
It's
that,
very
Carly?
similar to
I
your
did.
big box stores have.
I got you.
I did, my suggestion on that, rather than creating stipulations here tonight that may or may not work, is I can get the building inspector and the fire inspector together with the
Okay.
license holder, and if it's something that's feasible and can be done, I'm sure he'd be open to it. Otherwise, it would be the minimum that this would be set as an exit only.
Understood.
And how he accomplishes that, I would respectfully suggest be worked out between those three parties, the building inspector, the fire inspector, and the license holder.
It was with the building inspector that I went to DFS with as well, so he was
aware.
of what was going on and
Okay.
what we were trying to accomplish.
Great.
Yeah, my only suggestion is the three of you sit in the room so that you're all talking the same language at the same time.
So I don't have an objection, but I do have a question.
Yep,
Now
Mr.
appropriate?
Yep, go ahead.
So the tip certification, does that include, continuing education on, things as such as recognizing various forms of intoxication? I mean, some people have a higher level, but, should they or should not be served may not be the fact that they're just falling off the stool or something. So is there continuing education that goes along with these certifications? How often do they have to be recertified?
It's either 3 or 5 years. There is, when you are recertified, you have to take the course over again. So they don't have any any continuing education component, but you do have to retake it. It's not simply a matter of paying a fee and getting it so that you get a license. Say you get a license in 2018 and you're a bartender for 50 years. You have to take that course over and over and over again to maintain your tip certification. The bartender who was working on the night of this tragedy was tip certified, but it lapsed, but she was actively tip certified under New Hampshire law. So the point was that she did have a tip certification. She had been educated. It just lapsed due to some inattention on her part. So there's no continuing component to re-education under tips. But one of the problems, and I've done quite a bit of this, had cases where people have had blood alcohol concentrations near the .40 mark, and police officers in the city of Worcester, in a homicide case that I worked on, wasn't able to tell that the person was intoxicated, and that goes to your point. Some people develop such a tolerance because of their chronic drinking. One of the things that's he has an advantage is a lot of people here that come into his establishment are regulars, they're locals, and they tend to know them, and people may be shut off or refuse service that might not in another establishment look like they've been intoxicated. So in this particular incident, there was an incident where this particular person, Mr. Tui, was told he couldn't have another drink in December of that year, and the bartender would testify that he had very visible signs of intoxication, as she believed, and so they knew him. And it is a problem that all licensed establishments deal with, because someone who drinks daily is going to have, someone who drinks casually, socially, is going to look more impaired 3 or 4 drinks than someone who's a chronic alcoholic who's drinking daily. They develop a tolerance and they may be able to mask it much more. And that's a problem across the board, across the state, in every community where people who are chronic alcoholics get into bars and restaurants, and they're abusing the system, but it's not possible without bars having, breathalyzer machines mounted on the bar to know for certain.
Yeah.
So you have to rely upon the experience of the bartender, the tip certification, and vigilance. You have to watch. Someone's had 5 or 6 drinks in an hour, that should be a red flag. Someone's had, too much to drink too quickly. Someone's got a history. They've got to know who they're dealing with where they can. And I think he's done a pretty good job of that. In light of these allegations, I mean, he's been in business for a while now, and this is his first violation, alleged violation. So it is a problem, no question. It's a problem for anywhere. Every liquor store in town is the same thing. If people walk in and you don't get a big whiff of their breath, or they're not slurring their speech actively, and they're able to stand steadily, they're going to get sold a 6-pack of beer just like anybody else. It's just the unfortunate part of the nature of the human condition when it comes to this.
Great, thank you. Anything else?
We only have a motion on the floor, we
I have a
don't have
motion.
a second.
I do have a second.
Oh, you do? I didn't hear it, sorry.
Yeah, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Yes, sir.
So, what months? I heard that it was restricted to like a specific month. What was that?
That's going to be discussed between the attorneys
Okay.
and the police chief.
Gotcha. Thanks.
But there'll be two Friday nights, non-consecutive. Any other comments? I see none. Julie?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Thank you, Counselor, so much for coming in with your client. Thank you, sir, for coming
Thank
in.
you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board,
Thank you.
Mr. Town Administrator.
If I can get your
I'll
card.
give you my card.
Take questions from the audience?
Hmm?
Why did we take questions from the audience?
We were in,
Typically do that?
yeah, we're out of the hearing phase was over during that point.
Right, but again, we don't typically take comments outside of public comments.
Our counsel is Tom Harrington, Mr. Harrison Harrington.
Oh, someone had a question. I mean, I'm easy
John.
going. Yes,
Can I just have 5 minutes?
yep, go ahead.
We taking a 5-minute recess?
No. Mr. Tanzini, appointments and introductions?
We have none for you this evening, Mr. Chairman.
None, okay, great. I'll wait for,
Are you waiting for Diane on this?
okay, sure.
Or is she taking you file for that reason? I don't know. Did she talk to you prior?
I'm gonna move to C real quick. Approval for Chapter 90 of work plans. Bob, you wanna come up?
Mr. Chairman, we have Bob Sochik here with us this evening.
Mhm.
If you have any questions in your packet, was a Chapter 90 amendment for
Right.
April 4 of 19. The biggest issue was some deterioration of a couple of the roads that just required some immediate work. So this is taking our eye off not taking our eye off of, but it's gonna take a while to get into that sink that we wanted to be in. This does continue to contain the note that if the CDBG grant for Orchard Lane comes through, then we would, need to revisit it. We advised you of that earlier. And subsequently, we had the Main Street Bridge, which was re-inspected today, and we've set aside some possible monies to try to start looking at design issues on that.
Okay.
Depending upon the report that we get. Did they give you any idea, Bob, of how long?
I made it back early enough to catch the inspectors. I'm sorry, I'm Bob Sozik, the DPW Director of Templeton. Inspector, they did the over the bridge underneath inspection. They still have to come back with extension ladders and do the end of the bridges. He said it didn't look like there was much change from last year on the inspection they did today. But he thinks the pockets of the beams is where it usually worsens. And I don't know how soon he's gonna come out back and do that, but I told him sooner the better, because we wanna try to come up with a plan to try to get it repaired.
And we're pretty confident about narrowing is still a safe avenue of
Oh, yeah,
approach?
it's, there's no weight restriction, it's, gonna stay that way until we have a maintenance, repair plan.
Okay,
Our hope is, within 1 year, to find some relatively low-cost repair we can make that would let us get it back to full width. While we engage in the longer effort to try to find the rebuild monies that would be needed to do the job on a long-term basis.
okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before we get started, could I, introduce, a new employee of the Highway Department?
We have a new introduction.
I'm sorry,
Right
Bob.
here.
Well, stand up,
Dave's-
sir.
Dave's gonna be
My
joining us
apologies.
on the 16th.
Oh, great.
He has past experience in the municipality, and I think he's gonna be a great asset to the team.
Fantastic, great.
Excellent.
Welcome
Welcome.
aboard. Yeah, nice to meet you,
Sorry
sir.
about that, Bob.
Sorry. You're all set, Dave.
All right, so with all that being done, and obviously with the grant, do we have any information on that, the grant on the 800,000?
The CDBG grant can take upwards of 90 days before you get a indication of what's going on.
Okay,
It's been in now for about 4 weeks.
Right.
If I recall correctly.
yeah, 'cause I remember he had to overnight it.
Yeah, so you're probably looking at Memorial Day, early June.
Okay, to get the word back anyways. Right. Great,
I'm afraid so.
understood. All right, so what's the new plan, Bob?
The Chapter 90 monies, I plan on doing a full reclaim on, Pitcherville Hill Road. And we're gonna do an overlay on Pill Factory.
Okay.
And most of the other monies we have to do, some leveling and shimming on Berry Road, Royalston Road. I got Depot Road. I didn't bring my list, I'm sorry.
But we're spreading it pretty thin, correct?
Yeah, this is more or less focused on trying to hold these together, because where the complaints are so high.
Right,
This should be in your agenda packet.
I got it.
It's been like Royalston Road, we're talking 2024 possibly.
Right,
So, and I mean, like Pitcherville Hill Road, that's coming to a point, if I put a plow on it, it's just gonna roll it up, it's pretty bad. And I understand there's a lot of other ones, but we're trying to stay in the program with the road study that we had done.
right.
And then gonna be doing some shimming leveling on South Road. We are gonna do a little bit of crack sealing. Like I say, Sandy Pine, Phillipston Road,
Yeah,
Main Street, Berry Road, Royalston, Depot, Hamlet Mill. That was on a plan for an overlay, but there's really only a couple of bad sections
right.
at both ends, and I was gonna shim and overlay them to buy us some time.
Okay.
Auto River, there's a few spots. But if we don't have to sacrifice any money towards that grant.
Okay, so it's full utilization of the Chapter 90?
Yeah.
So if that grant does come in, how's that gonna place us?
Not good on
Not
my
good,
side.
right, because we won't have the Chapter 90 money to utilize for that road, to offset the cost of the assistance that the Light and Water provided to us as well,
Said if
correct?
that happens, we'll have to, go through the proposition I have for you tonight. And
Mhm.
it's not gonna be good, it's gonna set back probably 2 years' worth of work. I mean,
Right.
400,000, and you take 190, that's substantial,
It is, okay. All right. Great. Thanks, Bob.
Yep.
Does anybody have any questions for the director?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
so you plan to purchase a hot box, correct?
I believe that's going through capital.
Planning.
Yes,
Going
there's,
through the capital
there's some
planning.
monies on the warrant. I forget exactly how much, 22.5 perhaps, and then we're using some Chapter 90 monies towards it.
So is this amount of 10,000 toward the hot box, is that correct, coming from
Yes.
chapter
And then
90?
there's about 22,000 in the capital budget.
Thanks.
Is the hot box usable in the winter?
I'm sorry, Doug?
Is the hot box usable in the winter?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's my main reason they get it, is to use it during the winter. We'll use it year round, but it's a big asset during the winter where it keeps it warm.
Any questions for the director? I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I make a motion to approve the proposed revision to the Chapter 90 work plan as presented.
I have a motion of a second.
Second.
Any other discussion? I see none. Julie?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
can I just make a statement?
sure.
It's great to see the list, so I appreciate that, I have to say that. And when and if this is finalized, it would be fantastic if we could put that on the website.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the voters in town, all the people in the
once we,
town can actually see a list of, oh, thank goodness Lord Road is on our list. 'Cause there was years where we didn't have a list, and it's frustrating. People don't know whether or not their roads are gonna get fixed, and maybe your phone calls would
yeah,
kind of die down a little, I don't know, but
just the
it
6 or
would be
7.
nice if we could put some of these roads on a list on the website so that people could look it up,
Yeah, no problem.
Just a
Once we get a
suggestion, right?
definite and find out about the,
once you have a definite, yeah.
we
Great.
don't have a problem doing that. It's, yeah, 6, 7 months, and it's amazing how fast you get attached to the town, and this is one of my biggest goals here, so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Tanzini, the road study's on the website already,
It is.
correct?
It is.
Okay,
The study
the
itself,
complete
right?
study's on the website, because I think
We'll,
that-
we'll get this up in the next week or so as well.
okay, great, because we're still, regardless
We're
of,
waiting,
we're
right?
still in the wait game for that,
Yeah,
and we're still, 1.5 million per year away from fixing our roads?
yes, sir.
Yes, sir, thank you. I'll say that again, $1.5 million every single year that we don't have the money to fix our roads. Let's talk about the reconsideration of the grandfather clock at this time, Miss Richard. How we doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
2 weeks ago, we had a meeting, and
Mhm.
there was a vote done, and I did want to get the history of the clock. I had asked for it to be kind of put on hold, the vote, wanted to see if we could get some information on it. The vote was passed. However, I did do a little bit of homework, so I did ask Brian Tangway if he would come in and give us a small history on the clock, so that all the voters in town would know the history and where it came from, and whether it was donated to the school or the town, and because I think people are interested in that, so I wanted to ask Brian to come up and
Sure.
just give a small
Mr. Tangway.
presentation to the group.
Yeah, come on up. Just identify yourself for the record, sir, and then.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Brian Tangway, Narragansett Historical Society President. Obviously, like you said, you wanted to hear a little bit of history on the clock, and this is what we've dug up so far. There was a similar clock that was put to auction, so it was described quite nicely on the website because it was obviously going up for sale. So it said it's standing 105 inches tall, 33 inches wide, and 17 inches deep. So that's approximately 8 feet, a little over 8 feet tall. The large carved walnut case has an arched crest with a scrolled seashell over a carved maiden's head. In raised buried panels, door has carved corbels on each side with raised panels and turned rosettes on the front. A nice burled panel in the base clock is in excellent original finish with a good original glass on the door and sides. So this fits the exact description of this clock. It's, I'll go further with another story, so it matches the one that went up at auction. So in Charles Flood's book that he wrote when he was restoring the Wright's Tavern on Boynton Road, he got into great detail. And within that was a little story that he wrote. So these are in Charles' words. Uncle Fred had a tall clock made by the E. Howard Clock Company. The story is that they made 2 of them, and Hetty Green's son bought one of them and paid $800 for it. To go back, this is in 1880.
It's a lot of money back then.
It's a boatload of money. Actually, it's a little bit more than the tower clocks are that we put in the first church, because those were only 700.
Wow.
So this clock, Hetty Green's clock went for 800. This is a different model. So Charles goes on to say in his book, this one that was unsold, had remained in the company's showroom for many years, which was on Washington Street in Boston. It was intended for a bank's director's room, yet it never made there. Uncle Fred had bought it from the Howard people after they had financial difficulties and were reorganizing, and he paid about $80 for it.
Good deal.
So he used it for some years in his private office, and then when the firm went in with Standard Brands, which I'd never followed up to figure out, wanted to dispose of some of the things, so that he donated the clock to us for Templeton. Now, this is in Charles' words. With the low ceilings in our house, there was no room where the clock could stand up straight, so we had to put it in the barn. It was such an elaborate and handsome timepiece that we had to dress up the barn, and that was the beginning of the playhouse. The first thing we did was to put a Celotex in between the upright 2x4s and stain the timbers a rich brown. This made an excellent background for the clock. So within that book, they had pictures throughout, and it showed the house as they were restoring it, the barn where the clock originally stood in its barn-looking room, and then what it looked like after he decorated it. And he put Courier and Ives prints all around, framed with lanterns on each side. So he really dressed it up nice. So in our research, I'm just going through, the E. Howard stood tall in the hall of the Templeton School for over 50 years between the girls' and the boys' bathrooms, and in front of the office entrance. The people there took good care of it, winding it weekly and setting it when it was off. It was serviced on a regular basis, creating fond memories for many who walked the halls. Yet no one knew why the clock was there, how it got to town, nor was there a history shared with the students. When the school was destined to be closed, concerned townspeople contacted myself at my jewelry store to inquire about the fate of the clock. And as the current president of the Historical Society and a full-time horologist, I visited the school to see what the fuss was all about. Well, once inside the school, I recognized the clock immediately through this history that we've got here. And no one has ever mentioned that the E. Howard was across the street in the school all these years. It was literally overlooked. A clock of this size and importance was in the hallway of the school, so a plan was created to move the clock into the museum for safekeeping while the school was torn down and the new one built. For those of you that don't know Hetty Green, she was actually nicknamed the Witch of Wall Street. She was the most vicious investor for a financier of her day. She died in 1916, and she turned out to be the richest woman on Wall Street and in America. So she really did well for herself. And through our visitors, since we've had it in the building for 3 years, the enthusiasm of our visitors, both young and old, we were delighted to host this quality piece of workmanship and history. The question then arose as to its fate, and when it was revealed that it will go back into the new school, most of the visitors were puzzled and voiced their opinions that it should stay where its story is told each time we have a visitor. The society is now open most of the year, closed winter months. We're there every Tuesday night and every Saturday afternoon except holidays, giving us exposure to people who have never visited before. Years ago, the society was only opened Saturday afternoons in July and August, amounting to about 24 hours a year. Now we are open over 300 hours a year, with many events offering open house tours for free all year long. Not to mention the annual third grade tour on Friday in May, where 100 kids comb through the museum to discover all of Templeton's rich history, including the clock. For this, we suggested that the clock find its new home here at the Historical Society, a place where people talk about it, just as they do with the Baptist Church Tower Clock, the Trinitarian stained glass window, the GAR Hall, Civil War frames, and the Sarah and Eliza Goodrich miniature portraits. The school spoke of creating a focal point for all of the school children and parents to view the clock, surrounded by murals and images from Templeton's past. The murals are on the stairwell on the second and third floor, and the clock has a cutout in the administrator's office, only visible if you go inside. Not in the main hallway, not in the auditorium, not in the library, but in the office. So for all of those above reasons, we respectfully request that the clock should remain in the Historical Society building and a modern electric analog clock be placed in the office. 4 or 5 days ago, I was asked to do a petition, so I threw some papers around town, and we had 64 people sign up within those 4 days, just to show their support. As you may have watched on Facebook, it exploded.
No.
Nobody has an opinion on Facebook.
No.
So, you know, an informal survey showed that it was on average 100 to 1 of the people that are interested in the clock that it stay in the Historical Society, and that's why I'm here. It's not so much that the Historical Society wants it there, it's mostly the people in town that are pushing to get it done.
I see.
So this is where the history and the story is. I can submit those if you need them for any reason.
Of course, we can enter for the record. So who donated the clock?
Charles Flood.
It was Mr.
Yeah,
Flood.
so when he left that Boynton Road area, he decided to just donate it to the town. He never, we don't have any records as to how he gave it to the town, so unless the town has some kind of records. And Harry mentioned that it might have been in 1942.
My father worked on the building when he restored it in 1932. So.
No,
But
the,
it was
no.
I remember in school in 46 when I was at first grade.
It was there. So it's somewhere between the 30s and 40s that it may have made its way to the Templeton School.
Understood.
Now, I think the only reason that it went to the Templeton School is it's the only hallway that fit. Being 8 foot 8 inch, there aren't many places at the time that could have housed that clock. It's that big.
No, I understand. I obviously, my kids went to that school as well.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
so I kind of feel like a heel. It was my understanding that it was going to be out in the open along with the murals, and I feel stupid for not knowing that it was going to be in the administrator's office. So if we were to have a vote, I would change my mind. And I thank you for coming.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons I actually went down to the school to figure out, because
I
I'm
haven't
the
been
one that
down
has to
there.
bring it
I
back.
had a lot of other stuff going on.
So I said, I want to see where it is when I bring it back, and it was in the office.
That's not where it was supposed to be.
No, and that was exactly right. And the mural, which, when you see it, you're going to be amazed. It's beautiful. It's 2 stories tall, and it's got the original map of Templeton when they laid out the plot, and then a couple of vintage pictures. So they did a beautiful job.
Yeah, the pictures are amazing that you helped with.
But to have it hidden away, you know, if there's a learning moment at all, I would also have to question why over the last 60 years there wasn't a learning moment while it was there. You know, it was there.
So I would like to make a motion to have the clock stay at the Narragansett Historical Society.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, hold that motion for a second, yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I would like to move to rescind the motion and vote that was made at the meeting of March 27th, which determined the historic grandfather clock would be returned to the elementary school.
So I would second that motion.
I have a motion, I have a second. Any other discussion? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Beverly Bartolomeo. I
You
grew
have
up.
to come up to the desk.
Yeah, can you come on up and just identify yourself? Thank you.
Okay. I'm Beverly Bartolomeo. I live on South Road,
Yes, ma'am.
Templeton. I'm a little younger than Harry, but,
We knew that.
oh, yeah, right, okay. What I was concerned with was moving it, because I don't want it to get broken.
The Historical Society moved it to begin with, and they
Yeah.
knew how to take great care.
But
in
you
doing
know,
so.
all you have to do is somebody slip or drop something, and it's all over.
Understood.
Ruin it. So thank you for reconsidering. It's, you assumed, and that's all right, because how do you know?
Yeah.
Unless you go look.
That's right. So we have a motion and a second on the
Thank you
floor.
very much.
Yes, ma'am. A motion and a second. Any other discussion? This is to rescind the vote of 2 weeks ago. I see none. Julie?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote no. That was to rescind the vote. The questions I have for you, Mr. Tanguay, is the operational use of your facility itself. Is there sprinklers in there?
No,
Is it temperature controlled?
yes.
Meaning you have central air, central AC?
We have the heat.
You have heat?
Yeah, we don't have air conditioning yet.
Okay. No, who said that?
Beverly.
Say it again, Beverly. It did in the windows. But,
Well, that's
I'm,
what
I'm,
the
again, I'm
Historical
just making
Society
conversation and making comments.
Yeah, that's
I just
fine.
wanna make sure that we're all on the same page, that obviously this is a piece that is a town piece, it's town property. It's not Historical Society property, we didn't donate it at all, and I need to speak with Mr. Tanzini and council on how we do actually donate property that's town property legally to an outside organization, even though it's Templeton Historical Society,
Right.
but it's still an outside organization, it's not, it's still town property, so there's gotta be a process in place in order to do that.
And you'd have to cover that with the scale as well, because we've got the scale for the weights and measures that they brought over.
I have no idea anything about that.
It's the same thing, so.
Okay, again, I'm not aware of that, but I will be. Yes,
I'd like to move to direct the town administrator to prepare an agreement with the Narragansett Historical Society for the display and care of the clock at their building on the Common. And I'd also like to move to have an appraisal completed of the clock and listed on the town's insurance. Does that answer any of your questions
at whose
that you just
cost?
asked?
If we
At whose
donate it,
cost?
I would,
Not looking for a donation, I'm looking for them to store the
Right.
town's clock
But for us
at
to-
the Historical
But
Society.
for us to do an exam of the clock to get a dollar amount figure, that would cost dollars, correct?
Correct, it would.
Well, it would. Let me just say that a permanent, semi-permanent loan is not uncommon in any
Okay,
sort
so
of
that
form
would
of museum. You do, however, do it with a written understanding. Here it is, take good
Okay.
care of it.
that works, good. And
But
I
please
second that
remember,
motion.
but please remember, it's ours.
That's good.
And then the item is appraised, so that we can have it, sure, they have some other very valuable items as well. I've spoken with the insurer. They believe that there's a good possibility that we could list it on our schedule, because these things are a little bit different, than the chair,
Right.
the table here, simply placed there, if we had to look at something else. If you were to donate these items, we would have to have them appraised anyways.
Understood.
And because the collective value of them well might exceed the Chapter 30B threshold, at
Right.
which you have to
That was
have
my
them
next question.
appraised and go through a whole public offering and all kinds of other things. So my suggestion is that from a legal paperwork process, the simplest thing is a loan. You own it, they're gonna get to use it, they understand that maybe someday in the future he asks for it back, but otherwise,
Yeah, and that's common with other pieces that we have, like the fire pumper, the scale. There's several artifacts that are there that we're just holding for certain organizations. So if the fire department ever has a museum that they create, which they were planning on it, well, then we'll bring over everything that we have for firefighting equipment, no questions asked, you know, and.
But you are insuring all that equipment as it stands now, correct?
No, because it's not ours.
I see.
It's the town's.
That creates a problem with me.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, in the back.
We have a motion in a second.
Terry Griffiths, 12
still
Drury
in the
Lane.
discussion.
While we're talking about the clock and everything in consideration,
Mm-hmm.
the maintenance on it, is there a fee for the maintenance on it? It's at the Historical Society. Carter just said, you know, in good faith, you're gonna take care of it. Well, you know, he mentioned it does have to be wound up and things, and who better to handle it? But, and I assume you're not charging anything for it, so.
For
No.
every repair
If
I've
it
done
was-
for any artifact in the Historical Society, I've yet to charge a penny.
Okay.
So they're all
That's a
donations
great
on-
consideration, I
on
would
my
say.
part.
It is. Well, the school took care of it as well. They wound it every week, and they also
Right.
had to take care of it
Yeah, and
professionally.
it's due for service. The last time we suggested they do the service, they refused.
That was 4 years ago, right?
More than that. It was my
Okay.
dad that did it, so it
Okay.
must have been more than, it was 10,
Okay,
about 10 years ago, so it's way overdue for a good service.
understood. Mr. Tenzini?
if I might, Mr. Chairman, I could suggest that we, if you find Julie's motion agreeable, we could work out the lease, the lending agreement on the insurance, and then bring this back before the body with Mr. Tangway here, and I think we could answer a number of your questions within that document. So I'm not suggesting that this be carte blanche. This would simply allow myself and town council to work with the Historical Society to come to some agreement so that the rules of the road were understood.
And that's
better.
what I need.
Yeah.
That's what I need.
In the meantime, it would remain there, if that's your intent.
Okay. So we do have a motion. Can you repeat your motion again? I'm sorry.
I seconded it.
I know you second. What was?
I moved to direct the town administrator to prepare an agreement with the Narragansett Historical Society for the display and care of the clock at their building on the Common, and also to have an appraisal completed of the clock and listed on the town's insurance.
Okay, I have that. Did she need to add anything to that?
Well, I think whether it's a friendly amendment to the motion or just by understanding if there are other town items there that have been lent without some sort of agreement,
We need
I
to
would
know.
suggest that we,
There's never been an agreement.
that we incorporate everything so that
Okay.
it's clear and it's understood.
Okay, so we'll,
Motion?
yes, add
Okay.
that.
Yeah, it was a simple come and get it.
Understood.
Yeah.
You know, again, obviously, unfortunately, times have changed.
Yeah.
And they're continuously gonna change and go forward, because that's the only constant thing in life is change.
Yeah, we're perfectly agreeable with anything.
Understood.
And
Thank
I
you.
will amend my second.
Now, you gonna,
I already, well, I amended, yeah.
you.
To add anything other than the clock, I mean, we can certainly get appraisals on anything else that's in the Historical Society. Is that what you want us to do,
And
Karen?
having agreements made.
And have an agreement.
We'll work
We've
with the
already talked
insurer to
about
see
that.
if they think it has a sufficient value to where it really needs to be appraised. There may be other artifacts which just don't bear that kind of
Right.
scrutiny.
Understood. So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Yes.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Did you have a question, sir?
What you're just talking about is to ensure everything that's over there belongs to the town?
We're looking at,
That's what-
Because something like that fire engine, how do you ensure something
No,
that's
just looking
irreplaceable?
at,
well, we're looking at, it would have to be an agreement made, identify what's the town's property, what isn't the town's property, identify what's town's property, then have said equipment or said documents or said pieces appraised. If it's deemed to be appraisable, dollar figure amount, making sure it classifies with 30B under Mass General Law. Understand that the lawyers have to get involved. The temporary agreements will be in place, and then at that point, we can add it to the insurance, that the town will cover it, because obviously the Historical Society doesn't have that coverage. Is that clear?
Mhm.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? I see none. Julie?
yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Mr.
take
Tanquay,
good-
thank you so much for coming in and explaining everything to us.
Yeah, we'll take good care of it.
I have no doubt in my mind. I have no doubt.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want these, or does it matter?
I know I want them, for the record, please.
Yeah, for the record. Anything that you read needs to be in the record as well.
Got a copy in the PDF.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, sir.
All
Got
right.
that copy in the PDF?
I have the photos.
The one that,
I don't
But the
have that in
history,
our agenda.
I do have that, Diane. I have that.
Okay.
And I will make sure everyone gets a copy in their,
Oh, okay.
It needs
in
to
their,
go- it needs-
mailbox, yes.
It needs to go
It'll be
to,
about
I don't need it, I just,
Oh, okay.
Holly needs it.
Holly will need
For
a
the
copy,
record,
okay.
yeah.
so we
No
can have-
problem.
It
Okay,
was my
thank you.
personal email, it didn't come to my town.
Well, I mean, if anybody
That's
else
okay.
wants a
What's
copy,
the history
just I
of
wanna
it?
make sure
Well,
Holly.
all
So
this-
I'll make
Yeah,
a
I'd like to
copy
have
and
it
bring
read.
to Holly.
great, this needs to be
Yeah, send me
uploaded,
one if you need
it needs to be
Yeah.
uploaded for the rest of the
Yeah.
folks to see it. The FY '20 OPEX budget, Mr. Tenzini.
Mr. Chairman, this
Yes, sir.
is what would be the final budget to be presented to the town meeting. Over the course of the budget process, there was about $2,500 moved from the town clerk to the selectmen's budget. As a result of conversations within the last week, the cut in the intergovernmental account to account for our process to date with the unions was restored, so that was about $7,500. And then we had an addition, based upon our conversation of last week, to accounting and to the insurance and benefits. Now, that was in sum total in the neighborhood of $55,000. That $55,000 increase was covered by a $37,000 payment that will be made to the town of Templeton for accounting services that we would be providing them under an intermunicipal agreement. And by the way, I did receive late last week and then today the formal letter. The state of Massachusetts has agreed to pay the $30,000 that it will cost Hubbardton to convert to this town's software, the Vadar
Right.
accounting system, which makes this intermunicipal agreement possible. The additional funds is there's monies that have become available to the town under a state program that was not available at the time House 1 was filed. That was around 17.5, so around 54.5, and then there was a $793, I forget exactly, adjustment to the overlay to bring everything in at zero. The town's budget next year, when you exclude the increase in debt service for the school, is under 2.5%.
Okay.
And if you did not have the intermunicipal agreement with Hubbardston that's being proposed, you would be under 2%. We were not necessarily such great budgeteers. We had some, but we were the beneficiary of some good luck under our insurance numbers and some other things.
Right.
This does contain also the larger, not quite to the level the advisory committee would have liked, but a larger reserve than was there last year. And I think we have a path forward of setting the basis of how this would be put into the budget in future years. And I'm describing it as sort of like snow and ice, kind of aspirational and effort over time to try to get up to that number. I'm happy to answer any specific questions that you might have, but those are the changes that we basically made through the budget process those 2 evenings and the Saturday.
Right.
And again, I said it to the advisory committee when we were here, and I would say to both sides, I'm really very glad that we had the joint meetings. I thought it was very productive, and I hope we can continue moving forward on that vein.
Great, and obviously this will be published tomorrow as well.
Items that we can't vote on.
If there are line items that you can't vote on, we could simply abstain on that. We do have, that's problematic. We have 3 out of 4 that can't vote on the budget. Technically, if all 3
I only can't
abstain,
vote on one.
it only takes 1 vote to pass the budget. The other way is to not vote on the individual departments, but to vote on the overall bottom line. The other way is to vote on each account, having those people who need to abstain on that account without having the motion refer to a bottom line number. And after that, I'm out of options. Those are the 3 that I
Bottom
know
line
of.
number.
And which would you recommend?
Bottom line number.
I mean,
I only have to abstain
where
from one.
where are the conflicts, if I might?
Mine's insurance
ask?
and benefits.
Yep. And Julie's is insurance and benefits?
So I would have that conflict also,
You
as
would,
well as senior
oh,
services, as well as
so
town
that's
accountant.
3 people for
Actually,
insurance and benefits?
You would not have,
The
oh, yes, you
insurance
would
and
have.
benefits
So that's 3 on insurance and
For
benefits.
me,
Just bear with me a minute. Where's the other conflicts, if I might ask? Senior
Senior
services?
services and town
well,
accountant.
you've always voted on bottom line. Can we just vote on the bottom line? You have never not voted, so I'm a little confused.
Mr. Chairman, I would respectfully ask for a motion to approve the departmental budgets as presented, excluding that of town accountant, senior services, and insurance and benefits.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Have a
I
second?
believe that leaves 2 that can
I'll
vote.
second that.
Have motion and second. Any other discussion?
So you need, the ones who need to abstain, oh, it's everything except, I'm sorry.
Everything
My apologies.
except, so
So
can
all
we,
vote on
Every,
this?
there's no conflicts on
Nope.
any of those.
Right.
You're all
No.
set, my
Okay.
apologies.
Right.
Yep.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? See none. Julie?
Yes.
Diane?
yes.
Doug?
Yes?
And I vote yes as well.
My understanding is there's only 1 conflict on senior services. So, Mr. Chairman, I would respectfully request that the board move to approve the senior services department budget as presented.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Have motion and second. Any other discussion?
It's awfully high. Just my opinion.
Any other discussion? See none. Diane?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
My understanding is there's only 1 conflict on the senior services. No, we've done that one already.
Yes, we did it.
So there's 2 conflicts on insurance and benefits?
Yep.
Believe so, yes.
Okay. I would suggest that those who need to abstain state so for the record, Mr. Chairman.
I have to abstain.
As well as I.
And he
There's
also,
3.
so there's 3 abstaining from the.
John, it's all
Only
you.
takes 1 vote, believe it or not.
So how do you make
It's
a
a mo-
motion? He has to make a motion, second it, and vote?
There's only 1 person, he can make the motion and vote on it. Silly as it may seem, it only requires
It's kind of
a
silly.
majority of those eligible to vote.
I'll make a motion to approve the insurance and benefits amount as written.
And I'm assuming you would be voting for that, Mr. Chairman?
I am. I will also be voting for that. Thank you so much.
So according to guidance from legal counsel, you now have a budget. We would not ask you
We haven't done town accountant yet.
to have a total bottom
We
line.
still have to do the town
Town
accountant.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. Town accountant, I would respectfully request a motion to approve the budget of the town accountant.
So moved.
No, I'll abstain from that vote
Second.
also.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? See none.
Doug has
Diane?
to abstain. Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
I'm abstaining from this
Excellent,
motion.
thank you. And I vote yes as well. I think that now we have a complete,
We do. I have to sort out how to change the certification on the vote before I ask you to sign it. But we can work that out in the next day or 2. So,
okay.
Jeff, it'll be coming to you unsigned, so I can sort that through, okay?
Great. That was challenging.
Mm-hmm.
It's been no different than the last 3 years.
No, it hasn't been that.
Yeah, we've always had to do that.
It has
Yeah,
never been that difficult.
it's always been an
And then I
interesting.
had veteran services at one point, remember?
That's
right.
That was even worse.
Oh, yeah, that was bad in the first year.
Yeah, regarding the 2019 ATM warrant? Mr. Tenzini? Thank you.
So this is now the final draft. As of, actually, late this morning, it's been proofed by a number of folks. There is one excellent proofreader in town that I'm sure will find that the 5 or 6 of us involved in proofing it missed something, I have no doubt. But Article 1 is essentially as we've been presenting. Article 2, now that we're a little bit closer, the amount for litigation and codification, veteran services, and the snow and ice deficit are down fairly substantially over what we had originally presented. The town accountant is up a scush because of Hubbardston in June as we manage the deployment of their new software. Article 3, we spoke to a little bit earlier. That's a request for $17,500 for legal services in connection with the sale of Baldwin Elementary School, planning review and support of potential zoning amendments and negotiation of host community agreements. As we informed you, we actually had 2 submissions. We had the submission at Baldwinville, and we had a retail submission at another location in town. So we have 2 host community agreements to negotiate over the next few months.
Great.
The supplemental contributions to reserve accounts is the same. The consent agenda is the same. The trench law is the same. It's extensive, but I consulted with the town clerk, and it was never fully published when she got all the comments from the Office of the Attorney General. So we thought it important to set it forth at length, as we're doing with some of the others. Town council will be coming out. We have 2 prospective dates. I have sent them along to Jeff to see if his board might be able to join us at all. We'll get that date set within the next week or so. And that would be on codification and the warrant in its entirety. So we'll talk to Jeff over the next few days and see what anything's going on there. Moving along, actually, the rest, the municipal violations, the civil infractions, if you will, some minor changes. We left a $sign out, and we had a bad reference to one of the sections. But
What page are we on?
I'm actually, at this point, up to page 18, Article 9.
All the dollar amounts are
They've been vetted and re-vetted.
across the board, correct?
Yep, and
'Cause
as I
there's-
say,
okay.
I have no doubt that there's someone with a keener eye than the 6 or 7 of us that have been through this, and, I mean,
Okay.
that just happens.
Okay.
Article 9 is a late introduction. Town council, as he was working on the Article 10 marijuana open container, we have a no possession of alcohol on town property bylaw, but the town council advises that we should add a second section, which is about alcohol open container on public ways that mirrored the open container on marijuana. So I think he basically took all the chief's work on Article 10 and just mirrored it in Article 9 to have to do with alcoholic beverages. Article 11 remains essentially as first submitted to you. Article 12, this provides for 7 members on the Veterans Advisory Board, and it provides for the Veteran Service Officer serving as a non-voting ex officio member, providing that they can be designated as a voting member if needed for a quorum. That's similar to the language that we have on the capital improvement program. And it has helped improve their quorum. It strikes the report requirement, since there's a corresponding report requirement a month later in another section of the bylaw. Article 13 remains as presented to you when I first gave you the budget package, subject to, again, some minor spaces, spelling, kinds of things that were found during the proofing process. And essentially, in a nutshell, control of wireless communications towers are now all in your general bylaw. It's a zoning issue. We're moving them to the zoning. That's really 99% of what's happening there. The next is on page 34.
Julie's reading all this, right?
Julie's reading all this?
I'm not reading this one.
There will be, and I'll work with the moderator, and we'll try to get out to the public, there will be motions to waive the reading and approve as published. Those have some issues we'll work on with council.
Okay.
Article 14, the only difference between what we gave you originally is that the final warrant now has the map as the very last page.
Okay.
The codification of the existing town bylaws. And that's one of the reasons we'll bring council out. They've been up on the web for a while. We'll republish them. And when I say republish, just make sure in the news and announcements that we've informed the public once again that they're out there. Article 16, I think that we informed you that there were some title issues.
On one of the parcels?
You have clear title to one of these two parcels, and you have murky title to the other parcel. Everybody around you says that they abut Town of Templeton land, but there's no single, clean, clear deed coming in. So the intent of this article now is to authorize the selectmen to acquire by purchase, gift, or any eminent domain, any interest not owned by the town in these two parcels, and then we would sell them to the state. So in the event we can't clear up the title, you carry out an appraisal, you publish the taking against owners unknown. If you cannot identify those owners, then the monies go into the escrow for, if I recall correctly, it's 2 years, and when the escrow period is up, the money comes back to you. And we would use the monies from the other parcel, the clean parcel, to do this. So there's no fresh appropriation required. At the end of the day, the results all the same, unless someone can actually prove ownership, which they should get monies if for some reason there's a orphaned part of this parcel. Article 17, the sewer department budget is up a little bit. I met over what was proposed. There had been 2 omissions from it. One had to do, we now have the final debt number from the USRDA. The second is that there had not been a amount of money in the sewer department budget to cover the collective bargaining agreement. So that has now gone in that. I met with the sewer commissioners on Monday, which I advised you of, and I met with Mr. Jelenuski this morning, and he's agreed with all these numbers. And he was delegated by the commission to do that in their meeting.
Okay.
Article 18, that's a little bit of a change. They expressed some concerns that perhaps they didn't need to make as much money into the funds. So what I suggested was that we kind of slow it down and that over the summer months and into the fall, we review what the process would be, so they would have one similar to what I put in your budget books and is in your financial management plan. I think they like that idea. Again, Mr. Jelenuski's gonna be the one that I work with on that. So we brought it back to what they contributed at the fall town meeting of 17.
Yep.
This is the amount we probably would have contributed in the fall of 18, but we've now come to a mutual agreement and can move forward. Article 19, they asked us to, and Doug, I don't know if you're gonna, wanna talk with them again, but we had asked them to vet that number for their capital project. They went back, and on Monday, they indicated that they thought the 40,000 had missed the mark, and that they really needed $80,000. So it's here. Whether or not the capital wants to meet with them again, I leave to the capital committee.
That was for the hot tub, correct?
This is for the realignment of that interior roadway and rebuilding it, which is basically an area used primarily by the septic trucks as they deliver to the plant. The other articles were all dealt with on Monday. I had told you a week ago that we'd come to a potential agreement and had removed them from the draft. They did submit their evaluations on the personnel, so those pay raises have been approved, retroactive. They have agreed, they approved all of the various bills that were outstanding and the indirect costs. And they have agreed to transfer the collection of receivables to the Treasurer Collector's Office. They had some concerns over the cost of software, so we're gonna split that 50-50. That transfer would take place no sooner than 30 September, but the intent is that it would take place no later than 30 December. There would be no charge for this year. We would calculate that next December for their budget year coming up. I believe that we've accomplished everything that we wanted to accomplish in a manner that they found agreeable, and I'm looking forward to sort of relaunching and working with them on the kind of relationship that general fund and enterprise fund normally have with each other. The cable budget is as presented, as is the CP article 21, 22, the Templeton Scholarship Fund, the property valuation account, as presented on Article 25. I am seeing an error on 25. We'll have to fix that before we leave and before I have you sign that. After the word Board of Selectmen, there would not be "and all others." My apologies. And we worked with Town Council, who advised that for the purposes of the fiscal year, we simply put in exactly what it would be for the 52.4. So every year, that's gonna be a moving target, whether it's 52, 53, whatever the proportional,
I got you.
salary would be. And then every year, accounting will simply have to divide that. He felt that that was a bit of an accounting nuisance, but one that was most consistent with the statute. Article 26 is the general fund operating. 27 is as presented. 28 is as presented. 29, there were a few items that moved around. There were some things that we had some discussions. We needed to move a little bit, so there's about 5,000 or 6,000 that moved around in there. Nothing substantive. 30 is Monty Tech. By the way, we got some rare but good news from the Monty Tech today. Our assessment for fiscal 19 has actually been reduced by around $7,500 or so. 31 and 32 are citizens petition, and the mover of Article 33 will not be making a motion to move forward with that.
They're gonna pass over that?
Well, I think what we discussed the other day was that he simply not make a motion.
Understood.
Because under your rules, if someone makes a passover motion, the moderator requires that somebody first speak.
Read the motion.
And then somebody read the other side, and only then would he accept a motion to pass over So the agreement on Monday was that the presenter of the petition would simply not make a motion, and then we'll deal with it at that point, but that was thought the cleanest way.
Okay.
Happy to answer any questions. It's a 33 article warrant. It is very substantive because of the number of bylaw changes in the codification. And once we get the final date on that, we'll try to get that word out to as many people as possible. One last thing, if I might, Mr. Chairman. The starting time remains the same as historic. As a result of the conversations the moderator and clerk have been having, there was a suggestion that perhaps it be moved up a little bit earlier. After discussion, we thought that what we would do is circulate some surveys at the annual town meeting and try to make the community part of that decision. And then if there seemed to be some support for it, to try it at the fall town meeting, after folks have had an opportunity to express their thoughts, but to not make that change unilaterally without consulting with the community.
Good idea.
That's a good idea. Thank you for your presentation. Other than that one minor change,
I'm sure tomorrow one of the 6 or 7 of us will read it and find something, but we do think we've got it fairly well proofed at this point.
okay. When are we gonna get this to the advisory committee?
Well, if you don't run away after the meeting, we'll make the change, we'll print it, we'll have you sign it. And Holly will scan it in the morning. I have an email ready to go. We'll send them the final spreadsheet.
Yep.
We'll send them the signed warrant. And then next week, we'll get to work taking all the individual pages in the budget and getting copies of those made up for people who, aren't quite as tech savvy and still like that paper book. That'll take another week to 10 days by the time we get all that done. What I told Jeff was I'd try to have everything scanned and out to him by tomorrow sometime.
Great.
I make a motion to approve the annual town meeting warrant with the one change on page 37.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, a second. Any other discussion? I see none. Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Excellent. Moving on to F, approval of annual election warrant. Mr. Tenzini?
With the exception of the ballot question, which was prepared in our office and vetted through town council, this is the election warrant prepared by the clerk. It identifies the various positions, some of which we do not yet have persons who have filed for, so we'll be with a write-in campaign or a joint meeting with that body. As you know, if
Right.
someone isn't elected, the two bodies sit together and vote. It does have the ballot question, and we would respectfully request your action on the warrant for the annual town election.
I make a motion to approve the election warrant as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, I have a second. Excellent. Any other discussion? I see none. Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
For the board's information, Mr. Chairman, the town clerk has prepared an estimate, working with Globe Direct, who is our printer of our excise and real estate bills, on what it would cost to print and mail a voter's guide, and we've spoken with town council as to how much, that's actually in his wheelhouse, that's what the statute says. So the total costs are in the $27.50 range, which she does not have in her budget, so I did submit a request to the advisory committee. I don't know if Jeff got it. And 3 copies, Jeff. I got you 3 copies. For a transfer for $27.50 to prepare and mail out that voter's guide, which would be our first use of the statute that you adopted
Yeah, keep it down, please.
at your last meeting.
Thank you. Excellent. So nobody can run off tonight. We have a couple things to sign. A request of vacation carryovers.
I think the letter speaks to itself, Mr. Chairman, and I would
Okay, I got it.
await your action.
I make a motion to approve the request for the vacation carryover.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, second. Any other discussion? See none? Diane?
Yes.
Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Mac and Cheese Festival. We have representatives. Good evening.
I'm gonna recuse myself from this discussion.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Doug.
Gail
Yes, I did.
Noel
Thank you.
from Friends of the Templeton Elders.
Mm-hmm.
And we're planning our 5th annual Mac and Cheese Festival on the Common.
Yep.
So, we intend to use the gazebo area as well as the fire department. This is truly a community event because we work with the police, the fire, fire department's having an open house. They try to have an open house at that time. We try to get all local vendors and local businesses and even organizations. You know, there aren't enough restaurants in town, so we solicit local organizations to help with the cook the mac and cheese,
Okay.
you know, in cooperation with the Board of Health. So anyway, we tend to use the common area and maybe the area in front of the Historical Society. We'd like to use the Meals on Wheels van for food pickup. And, you know, we work with the police, the fire, the Board of Health, and CERT. And CERT did get a copy of this letter, and I sent a copy of the parking plan for last year to the police department, so that's all set. And we do intend to try a shuttle again this year. We tried it once before, and only one person took advantage of it, but we will try again this year.
Is that using the Mart van from like the high school down to and from?
So far, I've asked for a Sparky from the high school. You know, and I'm waiting to hear. And we can possibly use the Mart van as well.
Actually,
Who's Sparky?
might I interrupt for a moment?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
We
Who
asked for
Sparky is.
Sparky last year and the school denied that request.
No, we
Due-
didn't ask for it last year.
I did,
Oh, you did?
and they denied that request due to liability reasons. So I have a feeling that you'll get the same answer,
Okay,
just so you're aware.
yes, okay,
Can
thanks.
someone let me know who Sparky is? Because I'm not sure.
Sparky is the blue and white small bus that.
Oh, the Ganser bus?
Yes,
Oh, it has a nickname?
yes.
Yeah, it's Sparky.
Hey, so you learn something new every day.
Sorry, it's Sparky.
What do I know?
So that's interesting information.
Yeah,
know.
it'll probably be a no, but I did ask.
No, and I do work.
Sorry, I thought I had relayed that to you.
If you did.
Okay,
No, and I do work with the high school to try to get the students involved too.
okay.
So, you know, any questions?
Last year, the Mac and Cheese Festival went off without a hitch. We
Did. And no rain.
and no rain, so we'll hope for that again. And I actually collected like a lot of comments from everyone, and we incorporated that into my town common events policy that I have not finished.
Great.
So it was great, and all the rules were followed, and all the, I mean,
Yep.
we were like running out of food. Yes,
No, we didn't run out of food
that's
last
good,
time.
but it was like constant.
Yes,
you
constant
know,
food. We had 4 lines of
Yeah.
people.
So
No.
it was great.
The flow
That's
went
great.
better.
Okay, very-
Okay, so I just wanted to let you guys
Saving
know
the
what,
town tens of thousands of dollars at the end of the letter. I just had
Yes.
I just had one question on, can you explain how, the end of your letter was a little confusing to me. Please keep in mind, all profits go toward projects, programs, and events for the Templeton Senior Center, saving the town thousands of dollars a year. Do we
Absolutely.
have a record of how much it's saving the town of Templeton?
Absolutely.
Thousands of dollars? I was just a little confused on that.
We bought all.
Because their budget is
We-
pretty,
I know, but we bought all the furniture, all the tables and chairs for the senior center.
okay, yeah, if
We
I could
bought-
just,
We bought a
that's good.
car, a more economical car that gets 30 miles.
From proceeds from
from-
your
Yes,
mac and cheese festival in the
Yep.
last 5 years?
yes,
And you have that
yes,
on record?
yes, we do.
Oh, that's awesome, okay. I wasn't sure, I
Yeah.
just wanted
No, we bought-
clarification on,
Yeah, we bought a car
statement.
and we bought, I forgot what else was it.
so you've done some furnishings at the senior center, you've bought a vehicle,
And we bought.
so you had some big
One other big- one
purchases
other
with
big
the
thing.
funding that you're making on the
Yes.
next, okay, great, thanks.
And, Mr. Tenzini, where's our liability stand with utilization of town personnel, for an event like this? I mean, using our vehicles, and I know we had this conversation last year for insurance purposes
Yeah,
and all that.
it's covered by our standard liability policy.
Okay, and what about like police and, you're gonna need police for,
Okay,
okay, that's paid for, excellent. Obviously, the CERT team is they donate their time, which they do a fantastic job.
yes, they do.
And they pay for the gasoline for the van. So I think we're pretty well covered.
We're covered? Okay, great.
Thank
I'm
you.
comfortable.
Thank you.
I make a motion to approve the use of the town common as requested, subject to approval of parking and public safety plans by the chief of police and fire, and the submission of the standard insurance and indemnification information
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
A motion second, any other
for
discussion?
the Mac and Cheese Festival.
I got you.
Sorry.
I got that motion in a second. Any other discussion? I see none. Diane?
Yes,
Julie?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
Right, thank you.
thank you, Gail.
Doug, where'd you go? Oh,
Just
come
on the
on.
back.
Oh, I didn't even see you. Any Board of Staff member comments at this time? Any Board of Staff member comments?
Yeah, my only comment would be I'd like to thank Brian for doing his research on the clock. You know, that it was definitely good information that I wish we would have had, you know, before we made the vote at the last meeting. So I appreciate the effort that you put in to get us the good information.
Thanks, Brian. You're the
Thank
best.
you, much appreciated.
I know you.
Tuesday nights,
Do we have,
6 o'clock.
do we need to go into executive session?
We do, Mr. Chairman, I need
Great.
to request an executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21-1, to discuss the reputation and character of an individual. That individual has been notified in 48 hours in advance of the discussion. I would anticipate an action by the board coming out of that executive session.
Okay. Do I have a, so moved?
So moved.
Okay, have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
Are candidates allowed to stay for that executive session?
No, not for this one.
Need to be sworn in.
I don't
Yes, Beverly.
understand- Excuse me.
Yes, come on up here. What's the problem?
When we had a line item budget,
Mhm.
Beverly Bartolomeo.
Yep.
Same place, same station. We used to vote on the trust funds, so are you sure you don't need a town meeting vote when you make a change like this?
What trust
It was
funds?
part of the budget. The
What
Haskel
she's
Trust
talking
Fund, that's a cemetery.
Mm-hmm. You have the perpetuary care accounts, yep,
Yeah, so I would assume
that are investments, yes?
that should have been a town meeting vote. Always
Unless I was
was.
given the wrong name of the trust fund.
No, that's fine, Haskel Trust is one of them.
Then I'll refer to the spreadsheet for the correct name. This is an application of an individual and community for assistance
Okay,
from a
and
fund
using-
which is specifically established to aid the indigent.
Okay, fine, that's good, I'm glad they're using it.
Right.
In the right way, yes, we do.
You have
This is
many
a
more
very-
trust funds than
I
you
have a
can
lot of them.
imagine,
Yeah.
with many more rules than you can ever imagine.
Yeah.
And if
That's
this
good.
board thinks cleaning up the tailings from 15 years was fun, it pales by comparison, and I think Mr. Bennett's been down this road once.
And he's going back down it, so it's great.
But like the tailings, we stuck on it and it's getting done, and that's our intent, is to stay on this and to get it done.
Because that's the
It's not
correct
gonna be
use
cheap
for
and
it.
it's not
It
gonna
is.
be easy.
Well, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Thank you so much. Any other discussion? We will be coming back out of the meeting and to have a vote and to adjourn. So Diane?
Yes.
Joy?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
I vote yes as well.
Chief
If you want to wait, you can actually wait in the outside
see
lobby.